on the path to defeat.
We've decimated Al-Qaeda's leadership.
Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat, and bin Laden is dead.
We've decimated Al-Qaeda Central. We have eliminated Osama bin Laden.
Al-Qaeda is much weaker than it was when I came into office.
But Al-Qaeda is hardly on the path to defeat. The terror network has just retaken 2 major cities in Iraq and is now on the march to Baghdad. Remember when Joe Biden said Iraq would be one of this administration's greatest achievements?
And I am very optimistic about Iraq. I think it's going to be one of the great achievements of this administration.
But today, as the country falls apart, Obama was forced to acknowledge this.
Iraq's going to need more help. It's going to need more help from us, and it's going to need more help from the international community. I don't rule out anything because we do have a stake in making sure that these jihadists are not getting a permanent foothold in either Iraq or Syria.
Too late. Iraq is getting some help, but not much from us. Iran has deployed members of its Revolutionary Guard to Iraq to try to conquer Al-Qaeda. All right, Dana, I go to you first on this one. The president says that we're going to be getting involved. This is after he's telegraphed our timetable of when we're leaving. He's ignored military advice of how many troops to keep in the country. He's told us Al-Qaeda is on the run, falling apart at the seams, a number of cities. What should the U.S. do? What can he do?
Well, one of the things that we could do is to fulfill the original, one of the promises that President Obama made, which was for air cover, and that is something that the Prime Minister of Iraq asked for. It does feel, everything that I come to in terms of a solution at this point feels a little too late. In 2011, Dennis McDonough of the administration said that Iraq was ready, and that they were ready to take over, everything was going to be fine. The thing about the global war on terror is that I understand wanting to get out, but not leaving behind a residual force that was large enough in order to help them transition to an Iraq that could keep terrorists at bay. Now we have a situation that is actually worse than the status quo before 2003. And I'm dismayed. I'm upset for the Iraqis. I'm worried for the United States and for all the innocent people who are there, who are having to flee now because of this morphine of Al-Qaeda. And a lot of this goes back to the decisions in Syria and our decisions as a country. President Obama decided not to enforce his red line. And I think that all of these things can be traced right back to that decision.
Dana makes a great point. We took Iraq from the Baathists. We now lost thousands of lives. Thousands of people are maimed and disabled, Greg, and we've turned it over to Al-Qaeda.
This past month is amazing. President Obama's got the opposite of a Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to poop. I'd say it can't get much worse, but he'd take that as a challenge. He doesn't rule out anything but action. We realize that radical Islam cannot be house-trained. There's only one thing that we can do. It is time for us to close the gate, to batten down the hatches, to frack the hell out of this place. We need to make our country as impenetrable as Obama's skull. Because right now, there's chaos all over the world, and we're the only sane people left. It's time to look out for us, and it's time to make our borders a national defense issue. Kevin Williamson wrote a great piece today about this. It's the only thing that's going to separate us from the hordes at this point is making sure they can't get in.
And Eric, the president has told us Al-Qaeda's on the run. He seems to think just because we've gotten bin Laden, the whole situation's fine and dandy. And he did telegraph, we're leaving at this timeline, so they know that we're leaving. Today, breaking news, a number of Americans are being airlifted out of Iraq. Let me get you to react to Colonel Ralph Peters. He says the jihadis are officially winning.
In the Middle East, the United States is now in its weakest position since 1945 and the birth of the modern Middle East. Jihadis are winning because they are willing to die for their fanatical cause. We are facing a problem, if not caused, as I believe, at least exacerbated by Obama's dilatory incompetence.
President Obama making it worse.
That's a great line.
You know, a couple of observations. I'm profoundly saddened by what's going on in Iraq. We lost a lot of bodies, a lot of lives, a lot of American kids there. We spent a ton of money there, and now it feels like it's all going away very quickly. I'm going to agree with Greg with the oil. I think what we really need to do is become self-sufficient on oil. Look what happened today with just what's going on so far. Oil prices spiked to $106 a barrel, $2, and then will continue if they do take the southern port where the oil exportation happens. I'm going to disagree a little bit here with Dana. I think we did what we were supposed to do in Syria because, again, this ISIS group is a rebel group, not very much unlike the SOC group, which we backed. So there's a group that we actually said, John McCain said, yes, we should, the rebels in Syria, we should back them with some military support, with some money, with some weaponry. And then this ISIS group, do you realize that these two groups are fighting arm in arm together against Bashar al-Assad in Syria? My point is this. Don't get involved with these confrontations. Don't loan money, loan bodies, give bodies, sacrifice human beings, Americans, for some of these things until we know exactly who we're fighting for and who we're fighting with. So I think, in one sense, we made some moves right and we made some mistakes.
Dana?
I'll pass and let Bob, who's huffing and puffing over there.
I was going to say, I don't know which, you're both making a similar face for different reasons, but I'll let Bob's look of disgust take it away.
I just wanted to, there's so much revisionism going on here that, first of all, there never were Islamic radicals in Mosul or Tikrit. They came in afterwards. The Baathists were putting them down. Saddam Hussein kept that country in a pretty good shape, and he was our ally, remember, against the Iranians? So I'm not going to go dwell on the fact that I was opposed to this war in the beginning, or that a lot of this was predicted a long time ago. But the Iranians are the ones who rose up here, and the Iranians are where these people are coming from, and the Iranians themselves. The idea that the Revolutionary Guard would be in Iraq. I mean, Saddam Hussein would have mowed them all down, but we made Iran into a very big country as a result of it. This is not something that the president lost. I mean, what were we going to do? We're going to stay in there for 40 years?
We did that with Korea.
Well, that was
we did it with Japan.
That was by treaty, and there hasn't been a fight. There hasn't been a fight over there, as far as I know.
Look what we did for Japan. Look what we did for Korea.
Do you want us to stay in Iraq?
That's what we used to do.
But for what?
Well, that's what we used to do. We don't do it anymore.
That
Fine.
was a world war.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a world war.
What is it then?
Well, okay,
it's not a global war on terror?
Iraq is
not even
gone.
a serious conversation. Talk about revisionist history.
What's the revision?
And the other thing, everybody forgets that like, on 9/11, one of the keys was to try to prevent a place where terrorists would have a safe haven to plot and plan. They're not going to stay within one border. They don't even think there is a border now. That's what this group declared today, that the border between Iraq and Syria no longer exists, going back to the Ottoman Empire. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are foolish to think that we can just pretend like nothing's happening, that it's shut down, just focus within here, because where they have a safe haven to plot and plan, you can't drone that out of a state like that.
And it's also the idea that the United States turned down, they can't bomb, use American air power in Mosul because a lot of civilians will get killed. And that's what they wanted. And
the government of Iraq did not want a lot of civilians to get killed.
Obviously they did, but they asked for us to bomb there.
When they were moving down
if I could just I wasn't going to make this point, but I think I will. The first city that was turned over, the safe, most secure city to the Iraqi military, was in 2008 in a big ceremony saying, we've now got all these people trained, and it's the one safe place you can have. Now, the fact of the matter is, back then, anybody who followed this would have predicted that this was going to happen. Iraq is gone. It's going to fall apart.
That's not true. It was actually the generals who told President Obama, if you don't follow through, that's what will happen.
Well,
that's what was predicted.
Follow
through on the Status of Forces Agreement, which President Obama failed to sign. And they said that this is exactly what would happen. It was I would prefer to listen to the generals than to somebody who hasn't been in government in years, any day.
So can I ask you this then, Bob? Let's extrapolate this now with
okay, that was
Afghanistan.
A good shot.
So President
Obama
Obama
take shots constantly, Bob. You sit there and you act like that everything from 1978 is still relevant today after 9/11.
I think you're suggesting 9/11 seems to be the rationale for everything we do.
Well, can I ask you this, though? All right, so Afghanistan, right? President Obama has now declared that by 2015, 2016 or so, we will be completely out of Afghanistan.
Yes.
By your own admission, that's a mistake.
No, I don't think it's. I don't think we should be there at all. I didn't think.
But you don't deal in reality.
It's too late. We
What's
are.
the reality?
The reality
What
is
does it matter?
we were
If I
there.
could borrow
You just want to leave.
Why does it matter?
Why do you keep putting Hillary Clinton back in the spotlight by repeating her ridiculous statements?
I like the word.
It doesn't help Hillary Clinton at all.
Fine.
But
why are we in Afghanistan?
Let's be pragmatic. We're there. So the question is, do you turn it over to the Afghanis and risk what's going on in Iraq, or do you stay there?
Stay there for 50 years? Is that what
I'm asking you, Bob. You're complaining.
I say it's time for us to do leaving some special forces into the border with Pakistan and let the rest of it go because it's going to fall apart. How much history do you need to see? I don't care how old I am and how long ago.
Can I half agree with you? So you have a little bit of support here. I supported going into Iraq. I did. When they went in and they did not find WMDs, they should have said, okay, given the keys to the highest-ranking military official and said, if you support terrorism, if you become a threat to this country, we will be back. We would have been the most feared and respected leader. Instead, this is my issue. Paul Bremer sent the entire Iraqi military home, tried to privatize a lot of different regions, and that's what caused the insurgency. President Obama campaigned against all of these things, didn't listen to military advice on it, telegraphed when we were leaving, so there's a number of mistakes that were made. So I half agree with you. I'm not into staying there forever. I'm not into democracy building, but I do agree with why we went in the first place.
You're right, exactly right about Bremer. We also remember we were going into Iraq not to nation build. And when Bremer decided, for whatever power he had, to disband the Iraqi military, was just the most ridiculous.
I agree.
And all he did was turn them into a bunch of radicals. The country is lost.
Yeah,
and so is Afghanistan.
The military was the only hope.
He's right, though. The country is lost. It's the United States. I mean, we have vets dying in hospitals. We've got children amassing on the borders. We have an entire region that's imploding. We've got terrorists being released like doves. Can we create a golden parachute for President Obama? Just early retirement? He's got 2 more years, Bob. What's he going to do next? I mean, what could he do?
The things you talked about are domestic U.S. issues, and they should be dealt with. What in the world are we going to do with Afghanistan? Why do we care? They beat the Russians. They beat the British. I mean, come on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You look to our border.
That's right.
Do you guys realize what today is? Today is the 27th anniversary of Ronald Reagan's Tear Down the Wall speech. So look at it that way. You have, on one hand, Ronald Reagan, tear down the wall, making the world a safer place. On the other hand, you have President Obama and Chuck Hagel going, I don't know what to do.
No, you know what they did?
What to do.
They went on Twitter. Right. They went on Twitter to register their disapproval. The only strikes they approve of are on a keyboard.
Why do we have the responsibility to take care of Iraq and Afghanistan in the first place? Why do we have that?
Why do we have the responsibility to take care of anybody?
Well, that's a better point, except for ourselves.
Nope. I think that everyone is missing the point. The reason that you're there is to help protect America. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion. And the fact we have spent this segment talking about something that happened 12 years ago totally gives President Obama a pass on what he's responsible for in the last 2 years and what he is going to do now. That's where I think the discussion should be held, and hopefully there will be others that have a chance to do it.
I think with the way that the country is falling, it will be continued.
His incompetence has become his expertise.
America's most well-known serial skydiver made this pledge.